Risa Shimoda here, the Executive Director of the River Management Society, and I'd like to welcome you to this Wild and Scenic Rivers training. It's part of a series that we have been going on, for the springtime, and this one will be really neat because it will be a nice real-world applications of visitor use management on wild and scenic rivers, a nice crosswalk that will bring some great practicality to what some of you might have maybe just learned a little bit about. And this is the third in a series of 3 Wild and Scenic Rivers webinars that meetings, but meeting format for a webinar. And one was in March and one was in May. Both are available in video recordings on our River Training Center channel, as will today's, once we get it posted, hopefully pretty soon. So please don't be shy. Share who you are, where you are, what you do, if you'd like to give us some context for your participation, your expectations of this session. And if you have a question, we'll have time, dedicated to questions. If you have something that's like technical, like you can't hear, something like that, please put that in the chat. When we ask for questions, please raise your hand and then be prepared to unmute. There are not too many of us here, so I think it'll be pretty casual. And with that, I'll let our presenter take over.
Great, thanks so much, Risa. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Kelsey Mackey. I'm an outdoor recreation planner with the National Park Service, and I'm also a member of the Interagency Visitor Use Management Council, or IVUMC for short. I'm really excited to be facilitating this webinar with you all, and I know that we have a really great group here from across agencies and disciplines. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Lucy Portman. We are both outdoor recreation planners on the Recreation and Visitor Experience team with the Denver Service Center Planning Division. Thank you, Lucy, for your support today. So today's session is designed to support anyone who's managing visitor use along rivers, whether you're deep in the weeds of a comprehensive river management plan or you're just starting to navigate the visitor impacts at your site. Our goal today is to explore how the IVUMC's Visitor Use Management, or VUM, planning framework can be applied in a river management context, and more importantly, how it can help you address real-world challenges on the ground. So we'll walk through each of the 4 elements of the framework, highlight how they align with CRMP requirements, and then share examples of how these tools can be applied in river settings. But this is more than just a presentation today. We have built in time for individual reflection and small group discussion. So you'll have the chance to apply each element to a real visitor use issue from your own site. And then at the end, we'll come back together for a large group conversation and end it with a Q&A, as Risa mentioned earlier. Really quick, I want to step back and tell you why this matters. We are all here today together because we care very deeply about protecting river values while also providing meaningful visitor experiences. And that, as you very well know, is not always easy to do together, especially as recreation use continues to grow, often in ways that really stretch our capacity and challenge our existing management tools. But the good news is that you're not alone. There is a wealth of knowledge, experience, and tools that we'll tap into together, and the VUM planning framework really is just one of those tools. Before we dive in, I want to introduce a resource that you'll want to keep handy throughout this webinar. Lucy will share the attachment in the chat. This guide, Real-World Applications of Visitor Use Management on Wild and Scenic Rivers, pulls together resources and examples for your reference today and beyond. It includes a sample purpose and needs statement, desired conditions, strategies, and indicators based on the scenario that we'll be following to use as an example. More on that in a bit. But feel free to refer to it as you work through each element of the framework, and then we'll also share it out after the session so that you have it for future reference. And we want this to be useful for you. So to get us started, I would really love to hear what brought you here. I'm going to pivot to Mentimeter. So if you follow the link that I just dropped in the chat, it will take you to this Mentimeter. If you haven't used it before, Mentimeter is an interactive tool that we'll actually be using throughout this session to collect your responses. Submissions are anonymous. So if you could follow the link, and I'd love for you to enter one visitor use challenge that you're dealing with now at your river site. This visitor use challenge will be the one that you address today as we move through the framework together. So take a moment, share one visitor use challenge, and we'll see kind of what themes emerge. And please do let me know if you're having issues accessing the Mentimeter. So I'm already seeing some themes emerging related to not enough data as well as use and congestion. Great, thanks everyone. Since we'll be using the Mentimeter throughout the session, like I mentioned, I recommend just leaving it open in a tab for quick reference you can pull up later as we return to it. But for now, I'll move us back to the presentation. Real quick, before we dive into the framework itself, I do want to take a moment to provide a little context. The Interagency Visitor Use Management Council, or IVUMC, was established in response to growing challenges around managing visitor use on federal lands and waters. So in the early 2000s, there were a number of court cases, especially around rivers like the Merced in California, which really highlighted inconsistencies in how agencies were making visitor use decisions, especially related to user capacity or visitor capacity. And these challenges really made it clear we, as federal land managers, need a shared science-based approach for managing visitor use that could hold up legally, resonate with the public, and help us protect the places that we care about most, while still providing meaningful access and experiences. Today, the IVUMC is a collaborative team made up of 6 federal land and water management agencies. So we have Park Service, BLM, Forest Service, Fish, Bureau of Reclamation, and Army Corps of Engineers. And our mission is to provide clear, consistent, and practical guidance for managing visitor use. The council's tools are designed to help field staff make informed, transparent, and legally defensible decisions. And they're flexible and scalable. And they're being used not just on federal lands, but also by state parks, local governments, and even international partners like Brazil and Palau. And we know that visitor use challenges don't stop at jurisdictional boundaries, and our approach is built with that reality in mind. So why does this matter to you? Whether you're working on a designated wild and scenic river plan, managing a popular river access point, or navigating partnerships across jurisdictions, the VUM framework gives you a shared foundation. It is not a one-size-fits-all formula. It is a flexible, iterative, and scalable process grounded in planning and policy. And it's one that we've seen help practitioners like you bring structure, clarity, and collaboration to some really tough visitor use decisions. So now let's take a closer look at the framework that we'll be working with today. The framework is built around 4 interconnected elements: build the foundation, define visitor use management direction, identify management strategies, and then implement, monitor, evaluate, and adjust over time. Again, it is a flexible, iterative, and scalable process designed to support effective visitor use planning across a wide range of contexts. So whether you're working on a short-term project or a full-blown CRMP, this framework offers a step-by-step way to connect planning decisions with on-the-ground outcomes. And you'll notice that there are 4 core principles at the center of the graphic on the right there. So we have law, agency policy, the sliding scale, and public involvement. These are universal concepts across all projects, and they help guide how the framework is applied. We won't really go deep into law or agency policy here today, but it's important to know that they provide the foundation and guardrails for your entire planning process. 2 of these guidelines that I do want to quickly highlight: first, the sliding scale. So the sliding scale means that the level of detail and effort of your plan should match the complexity of your situation. It's one of the most important takeaways. Not every planning effort needs to be lengthy or technical to be very effective. And then the second one I want to highlight is public involvement. And this is threaded throughout the process. It's not just a step at the end. Community perspectives, user knowledge, and stakeholder insights really shape the direction of the plan from the very beginning. So today we're going to walk through each of these 4 elements one at a time. And after each one, you'll have a chance to pause, reflect, and then apply what we just discussed and learned at your own river site to your own visitor use challenge. Now, if you've worked on a wild and scenic river comprehensive river management plan, or CRMP, you might be wondering how this planning framework relates. The good news is that there's a lot of alignment. We'll share the link to this document that I am sharing now after the webinar concludes today. But these 14 planning steps in the IVUMC framework on the left column here, they line up really well with the CRMP process in this middle blue column. So the early VUM stages that you can see here, the why, clarifying purpose and assessing baseline conditions, map directly to the set the stage and, again, baseline condition components of the CRMP requirement. The more middle steps, like defining desired conditions, selecting indicators for monitoring, those connect with the wild and scenic river planning requirements to protect river values and establish user capacities. And then the final steps, like monitoring, adapting, and documenting changes in the long term and over time, so really do support the kind of durable, adaptive management that CRMPs are really built for. And so you'll be seeing more of this connection as we move through the presentation today. And we'll be working directly with both the frameworks and prompts that support both. So here's how we'll move through the rest of our time together. For each of the 4 VUM elements, I'll first walk you through a brief overview and provide an example. And then you'll take a few minutes to apply it to your own river site and your own unique visitor challenge that you shared earlier. We'll do this individually first, and then again later we'll have the opportunity to get into small breakout groups and share and get some peer feedback. And then again at the end, we'll come back together for a large group discussion and Q&A. And this structure hopefully will give you a chance to walk through your own challenge in real time and then get additional support from peers later on in the session. So without further ado, let's dive into the first element of the VUM framework, build the foundation. This element is all about getting oriented. So really understanding why your project is needed, how best to approach it, and what resources will be required to get the job done. There are 4 key steps in this element: clarify purpose and need, review relevant laws, policies, and previous planning direction or guidance, assess and summarize existing or baseline conditions, and develop a basic project action plan, including public involvement strategy. This element really forms the foundation for the rest of your planning process. It helps ensure that you're working on the right problem with the right people using the right information. And so today we are just really going to focus on step one, purpose and need, because your purpose and need will set the tone for everything that follows. Your purpose and need really forms the heart of your planning rationale, and it connects directly to early CRMP planning steps like setting the stage and defining your scope of analysis. So the purpose describes what your plan is intended to achieve. It's a broad statement tied to outcomes like protecting river values and or enhancing visitor experience. The need explains why action is needed at this time. So this could be driven by resource impacts, visitor conflicts, or even a legal requirement to address user capacity under the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. Some questions you want to ask yourself when developing your purpose and need include: what issue or opportunity are we responding to now? What values are at risk or need enhancement? And what does success look like at your site? Here is an example from a fictional scenario. This fictional scenario examples are also included in that resources and examples document that we shared with you earlier, in case it's helpful to reference once I move past this slide. So our example scenario is at South Fork River, again, totally fictional. So at South Fork River, increased paddling and fishing use is causing stream bank erosion, safety issues at launch points, and tension between user groups. So a planning effort is needed to enhance experience and resource conditions in this scenario. The purpose describing what the plan will accomplish is to develop strategic direction for managing use in a way that protects riverbank stability and water quality, reduces conflicts among user groups, enhances the quality and safety of recreational experiences, and ensures that access remains consistent with river values. So again, purpose is describing what the plan will accomplish. The need further articulates why the plan is needed at this time. So you can see the alignment between the scenario description and then the need. So respond to growing levels of visitor use that are contributing to erosion and vegetation loss, address increasing user conflicts, improve safety and organization at launch areas, and fulfill legal and policy requirements to identify user capacity under the Wild and Scenic River Act. So really articulating why this planning effort is needed at this time. And again, this example scenario and example purpose and need is in that resources and examples document if helpful. So now is your turn. In the next few minutes, I'd like you to think about the visitor use challenge that you brought with you today and draft a short purpose and need statement for your site. We'll take about 5 or so minutes to jot down your ideas and really try to keep it simple and focus on clarity. A strong purpose and need isn't long or overcomplicated. It should be really focused. It should define the specific visitor use challenge that you're trying to address and articulate why it matters. So think of the foundation for your plan. The framework says a well-defined purpose and need helps ensure your plan is both scalable and actionable. It helps you avoid trying to solve everything at once and guides you towards really feasible and prioritized solutions. So I know I am repeating myself, but I really just want to reiterate that good plans do not try to fix every issue at the site. Instead, they really focus on the issues where management action is most needed at the time and where planning can make a big difference. And so that clarity will set you up for success in the next steps as we move through the framework. So now I just would love for everyone to take about 5 minutes for you to draft a focus, purpose, and need statement to address the visitor use challenge that you shared earlier at your site. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them, and then we'll share our drafts in the Mentimeter. Right, it's been just about 5 minutes now. At this time, I'll invite you to share your draft purpose and need in the Mentimeter. You can use the link we shared earlier in the chat. Again, submissions are anonymous. This is just a tool meant to be a fun way to share our progress as we move through the framework and hopefully gain some inspiration from others' work. And please do let me know if you're having issues accessing the Mentimeter. Just want to do a check-in. Do folks need more time drafting purpose and need? Feel free to come off mute or drop something in the chat. All right, I'm seeing some coming in. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, everyone. So this is great. The purpose articulates what the plan will accomplish, manage user groups to protect cultural natural resources and still provide those experiences, and then clearly articulate why it's needed at this time, responding to growing levels of use contributing to resource damage. Awesome. Okay, I encourage folks to continue sharing in the Mentimeter. Again, this is anonymous and we'll share out a PDF version of submissions after the webinar here. Oh, we got some more coming in. Gather data to ensure capacity requirement is addressed. All right. Awesome. Great work, everyone. Thanks for sharing. Okay, let's get back to the presentation and we'll move on to element 2 of the framework, which is all about defining what success looks like. So this element really answers 2 big questions. What are we trying to achieve? And how will we know that we're on track over time? So this element has 3 interrelated steps: define desired conditions and goals for the project area, define appropriate visitor activities or kinds of use, as well as appropriate facilities and services, and select indicators and establish thresholds and triggers for monitoring and accountability. And so indicators will help translate your desired conditions into measurable attributes that can be tracked over time. We'll actually return to this step, to indicators and thresholds, in more detail when we get to element 4 of the framework. But for now, it's just helpful to keep in mind that these indicators connect directly back to the conditions that you'll be defining here. So together, these 3 steps make up your visitor use management direction, a positive vision for the future that's specific enough to guide actions and prevent haphazard or reactive decision making. And desired conditions in VUM planning often serve the same purpose as resource protection objectives or value-based goals in CRMPs. So let's focus on desired conditions, which are central to, like I just mentioned, both the VUM framework and the CRMP process. Desired conditions are statements of aspiration. They describe what you want the area to look like, to feel like, to sound like, and function like in the future, really across three dimensions. Resource conditions, so things like vegetation, riverbank stability, water quality. Visitor experiences, it could be sense of solitude or social encounters. And then facilities and services, so things like trailheads, signage, and river access points. So three dimensions: resource conditions, visitor experiences, and facilities and services. Desired conditions are not about how you get there. That comes later when we talk about management strategies and actions to achieve first these desired conditions. This is just about defining the target or what we are managing for. And again, for CRMPs, these map directly to the goals and desired conditions required to protect river values, free flowing condition, water quality, and ORVs, or outstandingly remarkable values. So as a reminder, desired conditions describe what we are trying to achieve. In this example, for a fictional scenario at South Fork River, we begin with a riverway wide desired condition to communicate kind of the overarching vision or goal for the entire riverway. Then we zoom into two management zones to show how desired conditions can vary by geographic area. So zoning is a tool that we often use to reflect the diversity of settings on a landscape. And it recognizes that not all areas have the same level of sensitivity, same level of access, or even recreation demand. And this zoning is especially useful when different stretches of river support different types of recreation or different types of infrastructure or visitor expectations for their experience. And you can see this here in our example scenario where the front country zone supports higher densities of use in a more developed setting compared to the backcountry zone that manages for lower levels of use in a more natural and undeveloped setting. And still, both the front country and backcountry zones achieve the overarching vision or overarching desired conditions described above in the riverway wide desired conditions. So we won't really be taking a deep dive into zoning today, but I did just want to highlight that desired conditions are often developed within zones like you see here. And that zoning really helps us intentionally match the setting, use, and management strategies to protect river values across varying conditions. So now it's your turn again. I'd love for you all to take a few minutes to reflect on the visitor use issue you're focusing on today and write one or more desired condition statements for your site. For now, draft your desired conditions to be site-wide or riverway-wide, depending on your visitor use challenge, to really just provide that overarching vision for what conditions you are managing for. If you can, try to touch on these three dimensions: the resource conditions, visitor experiences, and facilities and services. And these certainly do not need to be formal or final. It's really just a starting point for defining what you are trying to achieve. And remember, desired conditions do not identify how you will achieve your goals. They simply describe what the conditions are that you're trying to achieve and maintain. So let's take about 5 minutes now for you to draft desired conditions for your site. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And remember, the example scenario is captured in the resources and examples document shared with you earlier, and it includes the desired condition example for your reference if it's helpful. All right, it's almost been 5 minutes now. So at this time, I'll invite you to share your draft desired conditions in the Mentimeter. And as James reminded us, please feel free to come off mute or in the chat, ask any questions that you have. Great, I'm seeing some desired conditions come in. So use includes highly scenic paddling and rowing, wildlife viewing, cultural site visitation. This is great, really defining the types of activities and experiences that you want to provide. Awesome. So kind of bringing the public along with you and establishing rules and regulations or collaborating closely, I suppose, with the public and stakeholders. Awesome. Right. Awesome. Great job, everyone. Thank you for sharing. Great. Nice work. We'll move us back to the presentation now. And we'll move into the third element of the framework, which is identify management strategies. So this element really answers the question, how will visitor use be managed to achieve and maintain desired conditions? We are now moving from defining the what and identifying how we will achieve the conditions that we're managing for. So this element includes 4 steps. First, compare existing and desired conditions. Then identify management strategies and actions to achieve and maintain those desired conditions. Identify visitor capacities or user capacities where legally required, and develop a monitoring strategy or adaptive management approach. This is where we begin to translate vision into strategy. We use what we've learned about current conditions, impacts, and goals to choose the best tools for the job. For today's session, we'll focus primarily on step 9, identifying the strategies and actions that move us from our current conditions to achieving and maintaining desired conditions. So once you know what issues you're addressing and the conditions that you want to achieve and maintain, you can start to develop targeted strategies and actions to protect river values and enhance visitor experiences. So strategies are going to be those broad approaches like improving site design or changing visitor behavior. And then actions are the specific tools like installing hardened riverbank access, providing interpretive signage, or implementing group size limits. A helpful way to organize your thinking in developing strategies and actions is through the 3 E's. So engineering, education, and enforcement. Engineering are things like physical site modifications, trail reroutes. Education could include signage, outreach, social media messaging, and then enforcement, of course, things like rules, limits, maybe seasonal restrictions, permitting systems, etc. You can mix and match the 3 E's as needed based on what's most effective, most realistic, and scalable at your site. And the 3 E's are really used together to create a well-rounded and balanced management approach. So really you should focus on trying to identify strategies and actions in all 3 of the 3 E's. So here's how we might use the 3 E's, engineering, education, enforcement at South Fork River. Each strategy is paired with a specific action that addresses one of the issues we identified earlier in our example scenario. And this helps demonstrate how strategies and actions work together to achieve desired conditions and address gaps identified earlier in element 3. And those strategies I should have mentioned are included in that resource and example guide for your reference. So now it is your turn again. So think back to the desired conditions that you just drafted. Start by asking yourself what is getting in the way of achieving these conditions? What management strategies or actions would bridge the gap from current to desired conditions? We'll take the next few minutes. I'd love if everyone could try to draft maybe 3 to 5 management strategies or actions that could achieve and maintain the desired conditions that you just defined. And you can use the prompts on the slide if helpful. So, what issue are you trying to solve? What's the cause or contributing factor? What management tools might address it? And definitely encourage you to use a mix of engineering, education, and enforcement. So let's go ahead and take the next 5 minutes to draft some strategies and actions. No need to be perfect. Again, just practical. This is about brainstorming and thinking through options that you could realistically apply at your site. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute and ask. And again, the example scenario, including the strategies and actions on the previous slide, are in that resource and examples guide shared with you earlier. All right, it's been almost 5 minutes, so I'll open up the Mentimeter for sharing your management strategies and actions. All right, a couple education examples coming in. Some enforcement examples. Awesome. All right. Great work, everyone. Thanks for sharing. These are great. Love to see the 3 E's in action. All right, I'll move us back to the presentation and into the final element of the framework, which is where we shift into implementation and long-term monitoring. So element 4 answers the question, are we achieving our desired conditions? And if not, what should we do about it? So this element includes 3 interrelated steps: implement your management strategies and actions, monitor using indicators, and evaluate results and adjust strategies as needed through an adaptive management approach. So these steps happen after the plan is developed, but they really are essential to the ongoing success of visitor use management and achieving the purpose and need of your plan. And this is where the work really becomes dynamic and adaptive. If your monitoring shows that conditions are slipping below thresholds, or if strategies aren't as effective as you expected, this element provides the process for evaluating what's happening and adjusting management action as needed. So today we are going to focus primarily on step 13, monitoring, specifically on selecting indicators that help us track whether we're meeting desired conditions over time. So we're circling back to the indicators that I mentioned earlier. So to build a monitoring strategy that works, we first need indicators that are both meaningful and manageable. So indicators are measurable attributes of the resource or experience. So for example, you might monitor trail width to detect erosion, or you might monitor social encounters if you want to understand crowding. These indicators should be closely linked to your desired conditions, sensitive enough to detect change, and realistic to monitor with the resources that you currently have. So monitoring does not have to be time intensive or super high tech. The key really is selecting a small number of, or just one, meaningful indicator that aligns with your river issues and your team's capacity. So we're not getting into thresholds today, but it is important to know that thresholds define kind of the point where change becomes unacceptable in the condition. And thresholds signal when action is needed to keep those conditions in check to ensure that you are, in fact, achieving and maintaining your desired conditions. So we'll take a few minutes now to help you think through how indicators and monitoring could look at your site. Let's take a look at 2 example indicators that align with our scenario at our fictional South Fork River example. So these indicators are intended to help us assess whether desired conditions we've identified are being achieved and maintained over time. So the first example is a people per viewscape indicator, or PPV. This is a visitor experience indicator that tracks how many people are visible within a defined viewshed from key areas like river access points or scenic overlooks, for example. In our case, we might monitor a popular river access area and set a threshold. So, for example, no more than 3 people visible at any one time, or something along those lines. And this indicator helps us assess both the quality of visitor experience and visual impacts to scenic character. The second indicator example is a visitor encounter rate indicator, which is commonly used in both backcountry and river settings. This indicator tracks the number of groups that a visitor encounters over a period of time. So, this example, I think, is per hour while traveling on the river. So, for South Fork, we might set a threshold of no more than 5 group encounters per hour on a moderate use segment that's shared by paddlers and anglers. So, both of these indicators are measurable, they're feasible to monitor, and directly tied to desired conditions related to reducing crowding, minimizing user conflict, and maintaining the quality of recreational experiences we want to provide for. And importantly, they offer a clear and actionable feedback loop. So they help us know when conditions are drifting from our goals or drifting from our desired conditions, and then we can adjust management as needed. Now that we've looked at examples of indicators like people per viewscape and encounter rates, it's time to apply that thinking to your own project areas. So, for this activity, take a few minutes to reflect on the desired conditions that you drafted earlier. Based on those desired conditions, identify a monitoring indicator that would help track whether that condition is being achieved or maintained over time. The resources and examples document that we shared earlier has a long list or table rather of indicators to consider, and it's directly from the IVUMC's monitoring guidebook. I really encourage you to reference that table to get ideas of indicators you could use to monitor your desired conditions for your site. So let's take about 5 minutes now for you to select an indicator. When reviewing the table, think about why that indicator could be appropriate. So, is it measurable? Is it feasible for you to monitor? And does it clearly relate to the visitor use issue or desired outcome that you're addressing? And if you have questions, feel free to come off mute or drop in the chat. All right, it's that time again. It's been just about 5 minutes. So please share in the Mentimeter the indicator that you selected, as well as what desired conditions it's monitoring for. Just because we don't have the one-to-one comparison, since this is anonymous, it'd be helpful if you shared the desired condition related to your monitoring indicator that you selected. All right, I know the list of indicators, or the table of indicators rather, was pretty long, and understand if folks need a little more time to think that through. No worries. I am going to move us into our breakout activity, and definitely share your selected indicator at this time. So now that you've developed some of the key planning components for your unique visitor use challenge, so purpose and need, desired conditions, management strategies and actions, and a monitoring indicator, we're going to break out into small groups just for some informal sharing and discussion and opportunity for peer feedback. So each of you will take a few minutes to kind of present or walk your group through what you came up with. Definitely don't worry about it being polished. The goal really is just to get peer feedback, bounce ideas around, and also surface any questions you might have or uncertainties. And then it's also a really good chance to hear how others approached similar issues. I saw a lot of overlap with related to data and crowding and high use, in the first Mentimeter activity we did. So I definitely anticipate some overlap and some good sharing. So we've included a few prompts here to help guide your conversation. You might want to reflect on some examples or strategies from your group that resonated with you, maybe where you're feeling stuck, or how you might bring your peer feedback into your own draft planning components. And so once we come back together, we'll open it up for some large group discussion and Q&A. But for now, you'll have about 15 minutes in your breakout groups. So each person will have about 5 minutes to share and have a chance to ask questions and get peer feedback. So I believe James is going to send us into our groups now, and we'll see you back here together after 15 minutes. Thanks, James.
So James, you and I are in the stay here room.
We are. I figured since there was we ended up with 6, I thought we should let them,
Yeah, perfect.
be together and talk in small groups.
Mm-hmm. So we're asking Matt to join Kelsey's group. Matt Perepsky. Matt's currently still with us.
Looks like it should be in Kelsey's room.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna move to Kelsey's room. Hold on. Oh no, he's in. Guess he is in. When I look at move to somebody else, is the only options for moving Matt are to Lucy's room or us.
Yeah.
Matt, if you can hear us, let us know whose room you think you're in. Maybe he has a phone and a computer on or something. Kelsey's use of the Mentimeter is really good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I hadn't used the Mentimeter before. I don't think.
So what we could do right now is, since we don't have a room, breakout, want to stop the recording.
Sure.
Pause the recording.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope your breakout discussions were productive and that you had a chance to share kind of what you've been working on and ask questions, get some feedback. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'd like to shift into a large group discussion. Let me get my screen share going here. And so I'd be curious if a couple folks want to come off mute or drop in the chat kind of what stood out to you in your breakout group conversation, and or was there a particular area or challenge or strategy that really resonated with you? I'd just be curious if some folks wanted to share. And also, given we're kind of running short on time, I'd like to open it up for some questions as well. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, just well, in our group, I think the biggest concern was the lack of information about visitor use to begin with, and being able to track numbers of visitors in remote areas. It was that seemed like a lot of the challenge that was being observed to begin with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that the first Mentimeter activity that we did, a lot of folks seem to mention data as well. So I'd encourage you to think about if there's any opportunities to partner with volunteers or academic institutions and citizen science groups. Just really try to leverage partnerships to build capacity for that data collection to the best of your ability. Definitely a challenge in more remote areas.
I think one thing that and I mentioned it in our breakout group, and I was in the breakout group with Matt. So this has been a really valuable webinar, and I wish I'd had it like a year ago when I was working on a CRMP and we were going through this process for the first time and struggling with it. I think I really have difficulty with the difference between indicators and thresholds. It sounds, and when you see examples, it makes a lot of sense, but working through that was a little harder than I expected. And I think it's a good reminder that purpose and need is a really, like, that's kind of a good checkpoint too, of like, because I think that's where it can get really difficult to work through the whole process of your purpose and need if you either stray from it or the scope creeps a little bit while you're working on it. So just something I kind of learned through the process that, even though you have steps, it's still, in that first diagram is really good. It's all connected. And so that purpose and need in the beginning is really important.
Great, thanks for sharing, Nicole. And I'm happy to hear that you found value in it. Was there further clarification that you wanted around indicators and thresholds?
I think, and again, I don't know if I think sometimes because I'm based in Alaska, I'm sometimes a little bit of an outsider with regards to the fact that we're data poor is how we classify a lot of our areas. So it's like, I don't know if it's really relevant to the majority of the group, but the threshold when, like how you identify thresholds when you don't have a lot of data is difficult. So that would be really helpful if there's any suggestions on that process, but that's really where we struggled, was identifying that threshold with lack of data.
Got it. Okay, thanks for clarifying. That's super common actually, even in the park service. So you can still establish thresholds or even like interim thresholds based on your team's best professional judgment. You can also use peer-reviewed studies at sites with similar amounts and types of use to inform that best professional judgment. And anecdotal, we always say anecdotal data is data. If you don't have numbers, you probably have observations, and that is data to make sound decision making based on your best professional knowledge and judgment. And so I'd encourage you to kind of use those as a starting point, and then you can always refine your monitoring strategy over time as new data becomes available to you. So I'd also say it's better to start with a threshold and adjust as needed than try to wait for that perfect data. There's never going to be enough data, right? So yeah, best professional knowledge and judgment certainly will come into play with establishing thresholds. And same goes for user capacity. A lot of folks struggle with setting a visitor user capacity because they feel they lack data, but I think you have more data than you think. Anecdotal and observational data is data, and it is valuable.
That's good. And yeah, great information. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. And Lucy, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to, certainly, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but if you had any thoughts you wanted to share too, definitely feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Kelsey. That was a great answer.
Anyone else have anything they wanted to share or that stood out to them? Anything that resonated with you or any additional questions? We have a couple minutes left here. Yeah, Matt.
Well, I guess one take home for me was the importance of being in touch with your user group. That I think it's important to identify contact with your pertinent stakeholders that are using the resource. And that would allow you to, in a scenario where you have lack of data, at least you have some references to go by what people's expectations or interests are beyond, your personal views or something like that.
For sure. Thanks, Matt. Excellent point and great reminder. I'd say too, just to kind of build upon what you just shared, Matt, too, like public involvement is such a critical part of any planning process. Just like you said, just make sure you have those diverse perspectives and build public support, bring them along with you in the planning process. And it does help. You really got at this. It helps ensure that your decisions are well informed, right? So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I guess just following up with that is a lot of wild and scenic rivers are remote by nature, and maybe it can be difficult to establish those contacts with the users and get feedback. I think yeah, it might be good to brainstorm a little bit about different tools and ways to engage these types of users, which are typically fairly introverted or hard to contact by conventional means in a lot of ways, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Definitely a need to get creative for how to connect with folks. Okay, well, we have about 2 minutes left. So I am going to turn it back to Risa to close us out. Excuse me. I did just want to thank everyone quickly, though, for your thoughtful questions and just acknowledge the breadth of experience that we have in this group. And really thank you for showing up so fully today and participating and being willing to share the work you're doing to protect our rivers and values and meaningful experiences is so important, and it's really not easy. And I just really hope that today gave you some tools and ideas to take back to your team and to remind you that you're not alone and we're all in this together. And collectively, we are a network of the Brain Trust. And just thank you for being here and for the work that you do. I'll turn it to Risa.
Well, thank you so much, Kelsey. And it's clear that Kelsey put a ton of effort into this, structuring it and providing the background document. So thank you so much. Thank you, Lucy and James, for helping out today. And I just put a link in the chat. If you could take the quick survey, we'd really appreciate any feedback that you have. Also, with the email, if you have any suggestions on what else you would like to see, VUM related, Wild Scenic related, river related, please let us know. We're working on future programs. Love to have you join us. And everything that we do is to serve members and folks in the professional river management community and kind of adjacent communities. So love to hear from you. And thank you so much again for attending. Thank you, Kelsey. Did a fabulous job.
Thanks, Risa. Thanks, everyone. Take care.